Remember when grocery store aisles felt like a chemistry lab disguised as a snack aisle? The 80s gave us food products so wild, so experimental, that looking back now, it's amazing we survived. These weren't just discontinued because tastes changed. They were pulled from shelves because someone finally asked, should we really be eating this? Today, we're counting down 25 grocery items from the 80s that are now completely banned. Start with Olestra-based snacks, the fat substitute that promised guilt-free indulgence and delivered something else entirely. Food scientists created this miracle molecule that passed through your body without being absorbed, which sounded perfect until people discovered what passing through actually meant. The chips tasted genuine, crunchy and satisfying, exactly like the real thing. The problem emerged hours later when that undigested fat decided to make a rapid, unstoppable exit. Warning labels appeared on packages mentioning abdominal cramping and loose stools, which was corporate speak for gastrointestinal chaos. People bought them anyway, convinced they'd be different, only to learn the hard way that some scientific breakthroughs aren't worth the breakthrough. By the early 2000s, the fat-free dream had become a cautionary tale. The chips vanished from stores, remembered only by those brave enough to have tried an entire bag. It became the punchline of the decade, proof that sometimes nature knows better than laboratories. Jolt Cola burst onto the scene with a promise that felt almost dangerous. All the sugar and twice the caffeine wasn't just marketing copy, it was a dare. This wasn't your parents' cola. This was liquid adrenaline in a can, designed for gamers pulling all-nighters and students cramming for finals. The bright red can practically vibrated on store shelves, calling out to anyone who thought sleep was negotiable. Schools started banning it after teachers noticed students bouncing off walls during third period. The caffeine content made regular coffee look timid, packing enough stimulant to power through entire weekends. Parents watched nervously as their teenagers developed the jitters from a single can. Health officials began questioning whether teenagers really needed that much caffeine in one serving. By the late 90s, stricter regulations around caffeine content in soft drinks pushed Jolt into obscurity. But its DNA lives on in every energy drink today. Jolt proved there was a market for extreme beverages, even if that market came with side effects. Red dye number 2 was everywhere before anyone knew to be afraid of it. It brightened candies, intensified fruit punch, and made strawberry flavoring look radioactive. Kids loved the colors. Scientists started questioning the chemistry. Research in the mid-80s linked the dye to hyperactivity and potentially serious health concerns. Suddenly, those vibrant red treats looked less appetizing and more alarming. Companies scrambled to reformulate, replacing artificial reds with natural alternatives that looked disappointingly pale. It marked the first time many Americans realized their food contained more laboratory work than farm work. Entire product lines had to be redesigned as red dye number 2 disappeared from ingredient lists. What remained was a generation's memory of colors so bright they seemed unnatural because they were. The ban changed how food looked, teaching consumers to question what made their snacks so vividly colored. For 80s kids, that specific shade of artificial red remains burned into memory, a warning sign wrapped in childhood nostalgia. Tab soda arrived in its distinctive pink can, promising everything dieters wanted to hear. 0 sugar, 0 calories, all the cola taste. The secret ingredient was saccharin, a sweetener that seemed revolutionary until animal studies suggested it might be carcinogenic. Warning labels appeared on every can, impossible to miss, impossible to ignore. Sales crashed as consumers fled from what suddenly felt like drinking a science experiment. Despite the controversy, Tab developed a cult following among die-hard fans who refused to give up their pink cans. It became the drink of aerobics instructors and fashion models, people willing to gamble for the sake of staying thin. By the 2000s, Coca-Cola decided the risk wasn't worth the nostalgia. Tab disappeared quietly, taking with it an era's desperate belief that artificial could be better than real. The pink can became a symbol of a decade obsessed with finding shortcuts to health, even when those shortcuts came with warning labels. Kinder Surprise eggs were chocolate joy with a dangerous secret literally hidden inside. European kids experienced the thrill of cracking open chocolate to find a toy capsule. American kids could only dream about it. U.S. law explicitly forbids non-edible objects concealed within food products, especially choking hazards for children. Customs agents confiscated thousands at borders, treating them like contraband. The reasoning was sound. Small toys inside chocolate created serious choking risks, but that didn't make American kids any less jealous. Parents traveling abroad would smuggle them home like precious cargo. Collectors built entire networks around acquiring the forbidden eggs. Eventually, Kinder Joy arrived as a compromise, chocolate and toys separated by design. But for anyone who remembers the original, that split-apart version feels like a letdown. The original Kinder Surprise remains banned, a perfect combination deemed too dangerous for American shelves. The original fruit roll-ups recipe was pure 80s excess. These weren't fruit. They were fruit-flavored sheets of artificial dye, corn syrup, and preservatives that could outlast nuclear fallout. Kids loved peeling them off wax paper, stretching them into shapes, wearing them like temporary edible jewelry. Parents convinced themselves the word fruit meant healthy. The reality was closer to edible plastic sweetened into submission. When health advocates started examining ingredient lists, they found colors and chemicals that raised serious questions. The company quietly reformulated, adding actual fruit concentrate and removing the worst offenders. The new version looked cleaner on paper, but never tasted as intensely artificial. The original, in all its neon, sticky chemical glory, vanished under updated food safety standards. Anyone who remembers the taste knows exactly what was lost. That specific combination of artificial strawberry and red dye that marked the decade. Crystal Pepsi wanted to be the future of soft drinks. Clear, caffeine-free, visually stunning in its transparent bottle. The marketing campaign was enormous, positioning it as purity in liquid form. Commercials featured waterfalls and crystalline imagery, suggesting this cola was somehow cleaner than regular soda. The problem was taste. It looked revolutionary but tasted confusing, missing the caramel bite that defined cola. Consumers lined up once out of curiosity, then never returned. The experiment lasted barely a year before Pepsi admitted defeat. While not technically banned by regulators, the market rejected it so completely it might as well have been. Critics called it the most 80s product ever made, all style with substance that didn't quite deliver. Crystal Pepsi became a marketing case study in how appearance alone can't carry a product. It was too clean for a world that wanted its cola dark and familiar. Aspartame-loaded diet drinks dominated 80s grocery stores like artificial sweetness on a mission. Every company wanted their version of zero-calorie heaven, and aspartame was the golden ticket. Commercials showed glamorous people sipping diet sodas on beaches, living proof that chemistry could be chic. Then came the reports. Headaches, dizziness, strange side effects that turned miracle sweetener into national controversy. Health advocates questioned whether diet really meant safe. Consumers who'd been loyal for years suddenly felt betrayed, wondering if their daily diet soda was slowly poisoning them. Companies defended their formulations while quietly researching alternatives. Regulators tightened scrutiny, forcing reformulations across entire product lines. The original high aspartame formulas disappeared, replaced by blends using multiple sweeteners. For 80s dieters, it was a wake-up call that 0 calories came with other costs. The blind faith in artificial sweeteners never fully recovered. 3D Doritos in their original formula were snack innovation taken to dangerous extremes. Puffed into hollow triangular shells, fried in oils that made them explosively crunchy and concerningly greasy. Each bite left fingerprints that could identify you for days, orange dust coating everything you touched. Kids loved the hollow crunch that echoed like tiny flavor explosions. Parents hated finding orange stains on walls, furniture, and clothing. Health officials became concerned when tests showed oil saturation levels that seemed excessive even for chips. The original formula used frying oils that raised red flags with regulators. Complaints about digestive issues began piling up, and the FDA took notice. By the early 2000s, the original 3D Doritos vanished, replaced years later with reformulated versions using different oils. But snack enthusiasts insist the original was different, greasier, more intense, and impossible to replicate safely. They remain legendary among chip collectors, proof that sometimes snack innovation goes too far. Sharkleberry Fin Kool-Aid was neon pink chaos in a pitcher, a flavor combination that defied logic. Supposedly strawberry, banana, and orange, but mostly tasting like sugar dissolved in food coloring. The color was so intensely bright it stained countertops, clothes, and tongues for entire days. Parents joked it doubled as fabric dye. Then, new regulations around artificial coloring changed everything. The specific dyes used in Sharkleberry Fin didn't meet updated safety standards. Health officials found the coloring additives problematic, and suddenly that glowing pink became a liability. The FDA cracked down, and the surfing shark mascot had to swim away. Kool-Aid tried replacing it with other tropical flavors, but none captured that wild, unnatural intensity. For 80s kids, Sharkleberry Fin wasn't just a drink. It was liquid summer that glowed brighter than safety would allow. It disappeared as quickly as it appeared, another casualty of food safety catching up with food science. Aerosol cheese spray seemed like genius until you thought about it too hard. Bright cans with cheerful nozzles promising instant cheese on anything, crackers, chips, directly into your mouth. The convenience was undeniable. The ingredients were questionable. These weren't just cheese products. They contained propellants identical to those used in hairspray and deodorant. The same compressed gases that powered beauty products were delivering your snack. Each spray hissed with chemicals typically found in industrial applications, not dinner plates. The taste was tangy, metallic, with an aftertaste that lingered longer than cheese should. Health regulators eventually realized food products probably shouldn't share propellants with spray paint. When safety warnings emerged about the gases used, consumers started questioning whether convenience was worth it. By the late 80s, food safety laws banned those specific propellants from edible products. Aerosol cheese survived through reformulation, but the original version, with its industrial-strength propellants, disappeared forever. It was peak 80s convenience gone slightly mad. Caffeinated chocolate bars were the 80s answer to busy adults who wanted both dessert and desperation. These weren't children's treats. They were marketed to professionals chasing deadlines, combining chocolate's comfort with coffee's kick. Each bar contained caffeine equivalent to multiple coffee cups wrapped in sugar. The first bite tasted like ambition. The second brought jitters. Marketing promised sustained energy and focus. Reality delivered anxiety and crash. People reported racing hearts, inability to sleep, and regret by the handful. When companies started marketing them to students, parents and health officials united in outrage. The FDA stepped in after complaints about excessive caffeine consumption became impossible to ignore. Stricter limits on caffeine in food products forced these bars off grocery shelves. For a brief period, they were everywhere, near registers and vending machines, promising productivity in chocolate form. What they delivered was a lesson in how combining two good things doesn't always create something better. Today, they're remembered as the candy that tried doing too much. Squeeze Parquet Margarine looked like the future of cooking, golden spread ready to dispense straight from a bottle. No knife needed, no dish required, just aim and squeeze. Busy families embraced the convenience until problems emerged. The plastic bottles were manufactured with chemicals that didn't react well to heat, and kitchens tend to get warm. Over time, compounds from the plastic began leaching into the margarine itself, especially when stored near stoves or sunny windows. Families noticed strange films, odd textures, and flavors that definitely weren't butter. Laboratory testing confirmed the fears. Chemicals from the packaging were contaminating the contents. The FDA wasn't amused. Despite Parquet's insistence the product was safe when stored correctly, consumers lost trust. New safety regulations forced the original squeeze bottle design into retirement by the late 80s. It became a cautionary tale about how packaging matters as much as product, especially when convenience creates contamination. Lead-soldered canned goods were literal poison hiding in plain sight. For decades, canned foods from soups to vegetables to meats were sealed using solder containing actual lead. It kept cans airtight while slowly contaminating every bite. Researchers tracking children's blood lead levels noticed disturbing patterns in communities relying heavily on canned foods. Acidic products like tomato-based soups were especially dangerous, dissolving lead directly into meals. What began as convenient packaging became a public health emergency. Scientists discovered that acidic foods acted like solvents, pulling lead from can seams into family dinners. Children's products were particularly horrifying, baby food and school lunch staples delivering heavy metal poisoning. When studies went public, the FDA acted decisively. New regulations completely banned lead solder in food cans, forcing industry-wide retooling. For years, the damage had been done, particularly in developing nations where regulations came slower. Looking back, it's shocking how normal it seemed to trust metal sealed with toxins. The ban marked a turning point, proof that convenience sometimes hides catastrophic costs. Sodium cyclamate sweeteners promised guilt-free sweetness before guilt-free became suspicious. Found in diet puddings, light sodas, and sugar-free desserts, cyclamate was everywhere in the early 80s. It was the miracle ingredient letting people indulge without consequences. Then animal studies emerged suggesting potential cancer links. Panic spread faster than the sweetener could be pulled from shelves. The United States banned it completely by the mid-80s, with Europe following shortly after. Consumers felt betrayed. Yesterday's miracle revealed as today's potential carcinogen. Food companies scrambled for alternatives, giving rise to the aspartame era, which sparked its own controversies. For 80s dieters, cyclamate represented the first major sweetener betrayal. They'd trusted the science, embraced the product, only to discover the chemistry wasn't as safe as promised. The ban forced massive reformulations across entire grocery aisles, changing diet food forever. It taught a generation to question what sugar-free really meant. Fat-free Snackwell's cookies were the ultimate nutritional con of the 80s. These cookies promised indulgence without guilt, capitalizing on America's anti-fat obsession. Removing fat meant adding mountains of sugar, refined starches, and artificial ingredients to maintain texture and taste. People devoured them by the package, convinced that fat-free meant healthy. Dietitians tried warning it was marketing deception, but the promise was too sweet to resist. For years, Snackwells became a cultural phenomenon, the cookie that supposedly let you cheat guilt-free. Nutritionists later revealed they often contained more calories than regular cookies, just configured differently. Consumers weren't losing weight, they were gaining confusion. The cookies were sweet, addictive, and left people hungrier than before eating them. As obesity rates climbed, despite fat-free crazes, the truth emerged. Removing fat and adding sugar wasn't health, it was sleight of hand. By the 90s, Snackwells quietly reformulated or disappeared, another victim of misplaced nutritional faith. Rely tampons represented innovation turned deadly. Procter & Gamble marketed them as revolutionary, featuring super-absorbent synthetic fibers that promised unmatched protection. The unique sponge-like design seemed like a breakthrough in feminine hygiene. Then in 1980, the connection to toxic shock syndrome emerged. The synthetic materials created perfect conditions for bacterial growth, leading to life-threatening infections. Dozens of women died before the pattern was recognized. Doctors raised alarms while Procter & Gamble's marketing machine initially denied problems. It took public outcry and mounting deaths before the recall happened. Rely disappeared from shelves almost overnight, but the damage was permanent. The tragedy reshaped the entire feminine hygiene industry, introducing new safety standards, warning labels, and research requirements. It became a haunting example of how innovation without adequate safety testing can prove fatal. For a generation of women, Rely wasn't just a brand name. It was a tragedy stamped in regulatory history. High-sodium frozen dinners were convenience with a cardiovascular cost. Swanson, Banquet, and others filled freezer aisles with Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and gravy that could preserve itself indefinitely. They were fast, affordable, and reliable, perfect for exhausted families. The hidden cost was sodium levels that bordered on medical danger. Each tray contained enough salt to season an entire week's meals. Doctors began linking frozen dinners to hypertension and heart disease epidemics. What started as dinner solutions became health hazards on aluminum trays. Nutritionists joked that eating one was like drinking seawater with your vegetables. The sodium wasn't just high, it was astronomical, often exceeding 2,000 milligrams per meal. The FDA's evolving nutritional guidelines in the late 80s forced companies to pull or completely reformulate entire frozen dinner lines. The original recipes vanished, replaced by heart-healthy versions that never quite tasted the same. For people who grew up on them, it felt like losing comfort food. Those original dinners didn't die. They were legislated into history, taking their salty, nostalgic flavor with them. MSG-loaded soup mixes were casserole magic in foil packets. Every home cook kept them stocked, ready to transform basic ingredients into something that tasted expensive. Just add water, the boxes promised, and millions did. The flavor was intense, addictive, and unmistakably artificial. Then came the MSG panic, reports blaming monosodium glutamate for everything from headaches to Chinese restaurant syndrome. Suddenly, that flavor enhancement meant fear. MSG became the villain in American kitchens, blamed for mysterious symptoms whether deserved or not. Manufacturers panicked, scrambling to hide it under different names or remove it entirely. Supermarkets purged MSG products, and recipes quietly erased it from ingredient lists. The wave of all-natural cooking that followed changed American seasoning forever. By the 90s, MSG's reputation was destroyed, despite later science finding limited evidence of harm. Those old soup packets disappeared permanently, taking with them a flavor intensity modern seasonings can't replicate. Science may have exonerated MSG eventually, but the 80s damage was done. Pre-packaged tuna salad kits with mayonnaise seemed brilliantly convenient until they became health hazards. Designed for busy workers, they included everything needed: crackers, tuna, and a tiny mayonnaise packet. The problem was the heat-sensitive mayo packets breaking down during shipping and storage. Even sealed, the contents were quietly spoiling, creating bacterial growth inside ostensibly fresh packages. Customers began opening kits to find greenish residue, sour smells, and mayo that had separated ominously. Reports of food poisoning surfaced, and grocery chains pulled them immediately. The trust violation was severe. A product marketed as safe convenience turned into a stomachache waiting to happen. By the early 90s, regulations banned unrefrigerated mayonnaise packets in food kits entirely. tuna lunch kits eventually returned with shelf-stable formulations, but consumer confidence was shattered. The original kits remain infamous, the lunchbox equivalent of Russian roulette with spoiled dairy. Blue Pepsi in the 80s was a color experiment that looked futuristic until regulators looked closer. This was Pepsi's first attempt at breaking the cola color barrier, creating a glowing cobalt drink that looked like it belonged in science fiction. The blue was mesmerizing, electric, and achieved through chemical dyes later deemed unsafe. The specific dyes used, including blue number 1 and experimental additives, showed toxicity concerns in animal testing. Some reports suggested allergic reactions in sensitive drinkers. For a while, Pepsi dismissed concerns, calling it innovation. The FDA called it a violation. Stores quietly pulled it, and Pepsi moved to safer formulations. For anyone who tasted it, Blue Pepsi was unforgettable, syrupy, neon, and strangely metallic, like drinking electricity. It was the 80s in liquid form, loud and unconcerned with consequences until consequences arrived. The formula would resurface decades later in sanitized form, but the original Blue Pepsi remains a toxic symbol of a decade that never met a bad idea it couldn't market. Orbit's drink looked like a science experiment because it basically was. Glass bottles filled with colored liquid and tiny floating gelatin balls that hovered mid-air like lava lamps you could drink. Marketed as futuristic beverages, they confused as many people as they intrigued. The suspended balls were made from gel substances not approved as food additives at the time. Regulators found the formula didn't meet safety standards, citing concerns about consistency, stability, and digestibility. Consumers were equally split, fascinated and disgusted. The texture was bizarre, somehow thick and watery simultaneously, with chewy bits that made every sip feel like a dare. Most people bought one for novelty, took a sip, and left the rest sitting. Within a year, the futuristic beverage was banned from most markets and discontinued. Today, sealed bottles sell for hundreds online, not for drinking, but as artifacts from an alternate reality where taste was optional. Orbits represented what happens when marketing dreams bigger than food science allows. Artificial whipped cream in pressurized glass cans was elegance hiding danger. Before aluminum became standard, some brands packaged whipped cream in sleek glass bottles to showcase the creamy texture. They looked beautiful in advertisements, frosty and premium. Behind that image was a bomb. The pressurized nitrous oxide used to propel the cream reacted unpredictably with glass, especially in cold storage. Several cans shattered or exploded, sending glass shards and cream flying through grocery stores. Supermarkets reported injuries, lawsuits mounted, and regulators responded immediately. Nationwide recalls replaced glass with safer aluminum almost overnight. Some companies blamed improper storage, but consumers weren't accepting excuses. The incident completely reshaped how aerosol products were manufactured and tested in the food industry. For a brief period, though, it was chaos. Aisles covered in cream and broken glass, warning signs posted in freezer sections. The glass cans disappeared forever, but their story survives as one of grocery history's strangest explosive disasters. Tartar Control potato chips sounded like satire, but were real. In an era obsessed with adding health benefits to everything, some marketing team decided chips should taste more dental. They launched Tartar Control chips seasoned with acidic compounds mimicking tartar sauce tang. They hit select store shelves in the mid-80s and vanished almost immediately. The flavor was sour, greasy chaos that coated your mouth in salt and regret. Health experts pointed out the acidic oils were harsh on tooth enamel and stomach lining. Even the name was off-putting. Nobody wants dental hygiene messaging in their snack aisle. By the time FDA complaints arrived, the brand had already pulled inventory. Some blamed bad batches, others blamed terrible judgment. Either way, the clean chip experiment ended in disgrace. Collectors still discuss the packaging, a smiling tooth holding a chip bag, blissfully unaware of its fate. Tartar control chips became the ultimate punchline, proof that innovation sometimes deserves to die in the brainstorming room. Canned meat spreads with excessive nitrates were lunchtime staples nobody questioned until they had to. These processed concoctions were designed for crackers, sandwiches, and buffet tables. The flavor was meaty, salty, and vaguely metallic, considered perfectly normal for decades. The secret ingredient preserving them indefinitely wasn't innocent. Late 80s testing revealed nitrate and nitrite levels far exceeding FDA-safe limits. These preservatives could form carcinogenic compounds when heated or stored improperly. The sodium content alone qualified as dangerous. Health experts sounded alarms, and stores scrambled to remove the worst products. The ban came quietly, with reformulated versions appearing featuring reduced nitrates and shorter shelf lives. For people who grew up spreading it on crackers at picnics, the news felt like betrayal. One more comfort food revealed as cautionary tale. Today, nitrate-free deli meats are everywhere, but those old cans remain haunting reminders of when food traded safety for shelf stability. It was the era when forever food met its expiration date. Which of these banned 80s grocery items shocked you most? Drop a comment below. If this trip down memory lane made you check your pantry twice, smash that like button and subscribe to keep exploring the wild, weird, and unforgettable foods that time tried to erase.